Hey guys, it's Ann Yorks from the Flower Box, and today I am bringing you the first cookie tutorial of the year, and it is the cutest, it might be the cutest cookies we make all year. Today I'm making some really cute squishy Valentine cookies. That's right, I'm making cookies of your favorite stuffed animals, and they're going to be so much fun to pack up and give out this Valentine's Day. Let's take a look at each design step by step. Plus, don't forget to download the free templates that go with this video to make these cookies a little easier. Let's cookie it up. You can find these templates as a PDF download, print and cut to make these cookie designs a little bit easier. I'm starting with the frog Squishie, and I have a yellow food marker, and I'm just going to use that to trace these key areas, which is the curved section on the stomach and the curved section at the top of the frog. I'm using a tip number 2 with piping icing to outline that shape, and then I'm going to continue to use piping icing to outline both the crown and also the frog's eyes. Now, if you're looking for a complete list of icing colors used on not just this frog cookie, but all 5 of these adorable squishy cookies, you can find more information about icing colors on the blog post on flowerbox.com on the kit page. Now, I'm just flooding in that little tummy section first using white icing for the flood, and then I'm going to flood in the green icing right next to it. And I'm doing it this way because I do want those icing sections to flow together to create a nice flat surface. It just makes it easier to add the details at the end. Now, before you put that cookie in front of the fan, you definitely want to use some of that pastel Baker's Rose flood icing to add some rosy cheeks, but these little rosy cheeks have a little bit of a cute heart shape to them. Now, once that cookie has a chance to dry in front of the fan for 30 minutes to an hour, you're ready to come back in and flood in those remaining icing areas. So I'm using the yellow flood on the crown, I'm adding a line of green flood on the eyes, and then I'm going to do a wet on wet on wet with some white and black. All those are using the flood icing so that they melt and create one complete eye area. It is important when you're doing wet on wet designs to make sure that your icing consistencies match. I like to use a 10-second icing consistency, and in the past I've noticed some funky things will happen if your icing consistencies don't match, especially if it's too thin. So double check and make sure that you have a nice consistency on your flood icing. Now, the details on this guy are pretty simple. We're just adding 2 nostrils and a smile using black piping icing, and that guy is done. Now, you could personalize these cookies. There's plenty of room on the tummy, but they're so cute. The designs are so fun. You don't need to do that. Let's take a look at this bee cookie. I could see these cookies being used as classroom treats, and this could have a cute little Beine message that goes with it. Again, I'm using a tip number 2 to do my outlines, and I like to use that tip number 2 because it just has a nice wide flow of icing to allow a nice wall for when I'm flooding in those large icing areas. It really holds back that flood icing. Now I'm just following that template guide to add the tummy, and then I'm going back in and I'm adding the yellow flood icing. Again, those are just going to flow next to each other and create one flat surface. I do want to add some rosy cheeks. Again, because it's Valentine's Day, I'm going to add the cheeks in a little heart shape, and that just makes it a little extra cute, and it kind of matches the design of the stuffed animals. Now here I'm adding, with my flood icing, some black stripes to bring all those bee vibes. I'm keeping it pretty simple with just 5 lines, and I'm using my flood icing to do that. I let that icing area dry, and then I'm ready to come back in and add the antenna and also flood in the wings. I'm adding the eye using the black flood icing. This will keep the eye nice and rounded. Just remember that when you're using flood icing to add the eyes, they will spread just a little bit as they settle down. So always make those eyes a little smaller than you think you need to, because they will continue to grow. Just one more final detail on this bee. I'm adding some dark pink teardrops of flood icing. I'm going to add 5 of those with the tips meeting in the middle and add a white center. And then you have this cute little flower. I love these cookies because the details are so simple. It's really the colors and the cute designs that make them stand out, but these are super approachable designs. Let's take a look at the Squishie dog. You can see I cut this template so that the little heart patch around the eye and his nose are cut out. So I do trace those, and I'm also tracing the tummy as well. I'm going to outline the head shape first using my light pink with tip number 2, and then I'm going to outline those ears using the dark pink. Now, as I'm flooding in, I know the main section of this dog is going to be that light pink. So I just add a little line of flood around the eye and the nose and around the tummy, and I'm just gonna flood in that entire section so that that is completely done. And then I can go back in and flood in the rest of those areas. A nice white tummy, just flood in that big icing area. And if you need to clean up the seam where those 2 icing colors meet and get those straightened out a little bit, you can always do what I do, is just run a little extra line of flood between there, and it cleans it up. Now I'm using my dark pink flood to add the little patch of color around the dog's eye and then the white nose. Let's flood in those ears now that the cookie had a chance to dry. To give this cookie a more dimensional or 3D look, I'm actually going to add that nose using the white icing and just use the color underneath as a guide to bring that nose to the foreground. Dry those icing areas, and then we're ready to start adding the details. I'm using the flood icing just to add the little tip of the nose there, and I'm going to also add the little smile as well. I'm using a super fine tip. I'm using tip number 1.5 just to keep that detail nice and small. I am using the flood icing for the eyes, but these are small eyes. These are a little bit smaller than the bee. So I'm just being careful not to add too much, but I like using the flood because it keeps those eyes nice and round. I have a tip number 1.5 on my black, and I'm just going to add some cute little eyelashes on this dog just to add a little cute factor. And there you go. Oh, look at that nose. It is so cute. That is such a fun cookie to make. Sure to be a crowd pleaser. Let's take a look at the cat. I have the template cut out again, and again, notice I'm tracing the nose area. I'm using that same idea as I did on the dog, and I'm just going to outline that entire section using peach icing and tip number 2, and then I'm outlining the tummy and the nose using flood icing, and I'm just going to fill in that area completely with the peach. Now this peach icing is such a gorgeous color. I'm actually using it in 2 shades. I'm using it in a light shade like you see here, and I'm also using it in a dark shade on the ears. And you can find that color information. I'm using the Chef Master gels on the Squishie Kit blog post. It has the details about the icing colors and also some tips about baking and packing the cookies as well. Now this is such a little fun wet on wet. We're making this like a peach colored tiger cat. So I'm just adding a little wet on wet with the darker peach icing to add those stripes on the top of the head and along the side. Now that we have those stripes flooded in, I'm just going to outline the ears and we're ready to let that cookie dry. Now, I showed you that I added the nose using the template, but if for some reason you forget to do that, you can always just cut out that little nose like I have here. And I'm just gonna add some little guide dots. I don't want some big, strong, thick line on the surface of my cookie. I also don't want to poke the tip of my pen through the cookie either. So I'm just being really careful to add a little bit of a guide there, and I can always add that nose after the fact like I'm doing right here. Again, I like to use the flood icing just because that'll keep that detail nice and rounded and smooth looking. I'm just reshaping that nose just a little bit using the tip of my thingamajiggy tool, and that is also found in the kit, which is kind of fun. Now I'm just going to finish off those ears. I'm adding in the peach on the outside of the ear and also a little white on the inside of the ear. I just love that color combination. I did prepare some royal icing heart transfers ahead of time. I'm out of that turquoise icing, so let me just show you with my peach. I have this sheet. You can print this off with the templates, and I slid it under a piece of parchment paper. I'm just using my flood icing, using that heart shape as a guide in the background, and I'm just flooding those hearts onto the surface of the parchment paper. If you let those dry for 6 hours at least, or definitely, if you can, overnight, then you can just slide them off the parchment paper and use them as a candy accent on your cookie. It just gives you the perfect shape every time, which is kind of nice. So I have my little royal icing transfer, and I want to add it to my cat, and I'm just going to use a little bit of royal icing glue on the back, and I'm just going to tap that down. That icing will just kind of glue that transfer to the cookie base. Now let's add the details. I have some light pink flood icing for the nose, and I have tip number 1.5 again on my bag so that I can add that smile just using a really delicate squeeze and a nice thin detail. I'm adding those eyes using the black flood icing. Again, I'll just caution you, don't make those too big. Sometimes you can really overdo it. And then just 2 short black lines for the whiskers, keeping those super sweet. Now I do want to add some arms holding this heart, and I'm just going to kind of map out the shape of the arm first. Then I'll go back in with my flood icing and really kind of thicken it up. But it really helps me to just see that I have the right shape first before I go back in and just kind of squeeze a little bit of extra icing to get that nice and big. If you want, you can add a little eyelash to the cookie as well. Again, I'm just using tip number 1.5 and a super light hand squeeze to just touch down and add those lashes. That is a perfect cookie. All right, this cookie is my favorite from the bunch. This is the cute bear, but I think the thing that I love the most about this cookie is that the bear is wearing an adorable headband with 2 little hearts on it. So I'm starting off with that template. I'm outlining the top of the head, the nose, and the tummy area, and then I'm ready to get started with my outlines. I found it was easiest to start with that headband, so I'm using the light Baker's Rose pink to outline the headband, and then I outline the rest of the body of the cookie. Now I'm ready to flood in using that brown icing. I'm using the Buckeye Brown in 2 shades. This is the darker shade, and then I'll use the lighter shade on the nose, the tummy, and also on the ear. Don't forget to blush the cheeks with those little heart shapes using the light pink icing. I want to outline the ear. That's just that circle shape. I'm going to add a little curly Q or a spring for the headband. And then using the dark pink, I'm going to outline the heart shape. So let's get that cookie drying, and then once it has a chance to dry, we'll flood in those remaining areas. I'm using a nice strong squeeze to flood in the top of the headband. I'm going to outline the ear using the dark brown and then flood it in with the light brown. If you want a little extra dimension on the face of this cute little bear, you can flood that oval in. Notice how that looks a little raised up. I did flood another oval on top of the oval on the base, just to give that a raised dimensional look. Now I'm adding those eyes and the nose, again using the flood icing just to keep those details nice and round. That cookie is simply so adorable. I hope you have so much fun making him and giving them to your Valentine. Now, if you are interested in recreating these cookies, I have put together a kit with the cookie cutters. You can also find some supplies for packaging since you might be making these for Valentine treats. So the kit includes some flat cookie bags, some Valentine cookie tags, and some satin pre-tied bows. I hope you have fun creating these beautiful cookie gifts during this season of love. Again, you can find the kit and all the extra details on flowerbox.com. Until next time, happy decorating!